This podcast does not provide medical nor legal advice. Please listen to the complete disclosure at the end of the recording.
Hello and welcome to Everyone Dies, the podcast where we talk about serious illness, dying, death, and bereavement. I'm Mary Ann Matzo, a nurse practitioner, and I use my experience from working as a nurse for 46 years to help answer your questions about what happens at the end of life.
And I'm Charlie Navarrete, an actor in New York City, and here to offer an every-person viewpoint to our podcast. We are both here because we believe that the more you know, the better prepared you are to make difficult decisions in a crisis.
Welcome to this week's show. Please relax, get yourself a fruit smoothie, put your feet up, and thank you for spending the next hour with Charlie and me as we talk about a different way to think about the food that we eat. Like the BBC, we see our shows offering entertainment, enlightenment, and education and divide that into three halves to address each of these goals. Our main topic is in the second half, so feel free to fast forward to that chatter-free zone. In the first half, Charlie continues his series reporting about Supercentarian obituaries. And this week, he'll be talking about Louise Levy, who lived from 1910 to 1923. She died at age 112 after breaking a hip 2 months prior to her death. After surgery rehabilitation, that had her moving with a walker, but then she developed an infection that weakened her. In the second half, I'm going to talk about food as medicine. And in the third half, Charlie reports about the death of a star. So Charlie, how are you?
I'm okay. Yes, I'm okay.
Just okay.
Yeah, actually, the weather here in New York has actually been nice. It hasn't been crazy. Been very comfortable. A lot of tourists over Labor Day. A lot of tourists.
Well, but that's what makes your economy sing.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they can find a different tune. Yeah, it's just a lot of folks here. And interestingly, they just showing up more and more in places that are not, people say New York and think of, for example, Times Square. But there are other somewhat quieter sections of New York. And I don't know, people have discovered those sections as well. So, yeah, there we are. That's my hard luck story, which really is cockeyed. There's nothing. How about with you? What's going on there?
Not much. We watched. Have you seen the series Chaos? K-A.
No.
O-S.
No. My sister told me about it because she saw it over at a friend's house. It's
really good.
Yeah, she liked it a lot. Yeah.
So Jeff Goldblum and a variety of different people as the different gods, and a lot about death and getting to the other side and intrigue. It was good. I liked it. I thought it was 5 in the series, 5 shows in the series, and then the 6th popped up. And it was like, oh. And then Dave said, no, there's 6. And that wasn't right. There were 7. So that was our Sunday. Because, once we got that entrenched, it was like, okay, might as well sit here.
Right. Yeah. Well, in our first half, Louise attended but did not graduate from Hunter College. In 1939, she married Seymour Levy, who sold housewares for a company founded by his father. He later took over the company, and Mrs. Levy became his office manager when he moved the business into their house in Larchmont, New York. She continued to work into her 90s for the man who acquired the company after her husband died in 1991. At her death, she was known as the oldest living person in New York State, according to LongVQuest, which maintains a database of supercentarians, people who have lived into a 12th decade. Mrs. Levy was one of more than 700 people, all 95 or older, recruited since 1998 to participate in a study by the Institute for Aging Research at the Albert Einstein School of Medicine in the Bronx to learn the genetic reasons for their unusually long, healthy lives. It's not luck, said Dr. Nir Basile, an endocrinologist who directs the institute. They exceeded luck. The biggest answer is genetics. Using the blood and plasma of the test group, all Ashkenazi Jews, a comparatively homogeneous population whose genetic variations are easier to spot, the Institute's Longevity Genes Project has discovered gene mutations that are believed to be responsible for slowing the impact of aging on people like Mrs. Levy and protecting them against high cholesterol, heart disease, diabetes, and Alzheimer's disease. The most striking thing about them is they had a contradiction of morbidity, Dr. Barzili said. They are sick as a group for very little time at the end of their lives. He added, did they do what we know we should do? Exercise, diet, and sleep, and have social connectivity? The answer is mostly no. 60% were smoking. Less than 50% did much household activity or biking. 50% were overweight or obese. Less than 3% were vegetarians. So they weren't that special in that sense. The goal of the research is the development of drugs that would imitate what the centenarians' genes do to protect their health. Mrs. Levy did not have heart disease, diabetes, or Alzheimer's disease, but was treated for breast cancer and smoked cigarettes for decades, until 1965, when the U.S. Surgeon General put health warnings on cigarette packs. Even as her hearing, eyesight, and mobility diminished in recent years, she stayed active with Tai Chi and stretching classes, playing bridge, and knitting sweaters for hospitalized babies. She began losing her short-term memory only in the last 6 months. Mrs. Levy believed that her low-cholesterol diet, positive attitude, and daily glass of red wine contributed to her extended good health. Everybody says good genes, she told the Canadian newspaper The National Post in 2012, but I don't think it's good genes. She may have been onto something. There is more than one way to get to 100, Dr. Basili said, but some of them are genes that are related to cholesterol. Unrelated to high cholesterol is this week's recipe for Copycat Samoa Girl Scout cookies. And while I'm no Girl Scout, I do love Girl Scout cookies. We all have a favorite Girl Scout cookie, and so we all know that it can be a long and sad wait for cookie season to roll around if you didn't stock up enough boxes of your beloved flavor while you had the chance. It's happened to the best of us, but never fear. If you didn't catch the girls in green vests in front of the grocery store this year, you can always make your own. If Samoas happen to be your favorite, and how could they not be? What with the salty cookie crunch, chewy caramel, the sweet bite of chocolate and coconut? Good. We've got you covered with a no-bake option that will satisfy the cookie craving in just 20 minutes. Leave the Girl Scouts at home when you go to your next funeral lunch, but take these cookies. And please go to our webpage for this week's recipe for Copycat Samoa Girl Scout cookies and additional resources for this program. Everyone Dies is offered at no cost, but is not free to produce. Please contribute what you can. Your tax-deductible gift will go directly to supporting our nonprofit journalism so that we can remain accessible to everyone. You can also donate at www.everyonedies.org. That's dies.org, or at our site on Patreon, www.patreon.com, and search for Everyone Dies. Marianne?
Thanks, Charlie. You might think that how you're going to die is already decided. My dad used to say that when your number is up, your number is up, so that he didn't have to worry about how much he smoked or watched his diet. He died at age 53, And the more I learned as a nurse, the less I thought his view was correct. For most of our leading causes of death, the science indicates that our genes account for only 10 to 20% of the risk at most. Indeed, when people move from low-risk to high-risk countries, their disease rates almost always change to those of the new environment. New diet, new diseases. But the reverse is also true. If we switch from eating the standard American diet to one that is higher in whole plant foods, such as fruits and vegetables, we may lower our risk. Many research studies indicate that the realistic modifications of diet and lifestyle can prevent most coronary artery disease, stroke, diabetes, colon cancer, and smoking-related cancers. Unprocessed or minimally processed foods are whole foods in which the vitamins and nutrients are still in them. The food is in its natural or nearly natural state. These foods may be minimally altered by removing the inedible parts, drying, crushing, roasting, boiling, freezing, or pasteurization to make them more suitable to store and safe to consume. Unprocessed or minimally processed foods would include carrots, apples, raw chicken, melon, and raw unsalted nuts. Processing changes a food from its natural state. Processed foods are made by adding salt, oil, sugar, and other substances. Examples include canned fish or canned vegetables, fruits and syrup, and freshly made breads. Most processed foods have 2 or 3 ingredients, so the more ingredients on the label, the more processed the food is. Some foods are highly processed or what are called ultra-processed. They most likely have many added ingredients such as sugar, salt, fat, artificial colors, and preservatives. Ultra-processed foods are high in added sugars and salt, low in dietary fiber, and are made mostly from substances extracted from foods, such as fats, starches, added sugars, and hydrogenated fats. They may also contain chemical additives like artificial colors and flavors or stabilizers. Examples of these foods are frozen meals, soft drinks, hot dogs and cold cuts, fast food, packaged cookies, cakes, and salty snacks. A study by Foillette and colleagues to measure the potential associations between eating of ultra-processed foods and the risk of cancer documented a statistically significant 10% increase in the proportion of ultra-processed foods in the diet was associated with a significant increase of greater than 10% risk of cancer, with the most significant being breast cancer. So, whenever possible, try to avoid or limit ultra-processed foods. So here's some examples to help you quickly determine if a food is minimally processed, processed, or ultra-processed. So minimally processed would be corn. Processed would be canned corn. And ultra-processed would be corn chips. See the difference? It may seem like information for eating healthy changes, and it does to some extent based on research findings as studies change what the science knows. This is expected. The New York Times recently published the top nutritional recommendations from this year, and they include 1, the Mediterranean diet is still the golden child according to nutrition experts. Decades of research have linked it to various health benefits, including reduced risk of cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, cognitive decline, and certain types of cancer. And best of all, it's not a diet in the everyday sense. There's no counting calories or cutting out foods. Second is a glass of wine a day will not keep the doctor away. A few decades ago, it was commonly understood that a glass or 2 of red wine was good for your heart. It was an appealing idea, and it was backed by research at the time. But the science has since changed, and experts say that the latest evidence suggests that the risk of drinking alcohol, including red wine, outweigh any potential benefits. Next are avocados are the new apple. Avocados are a nutritional powerhouse. They're rich in heart-healthy fats and fiber, as well as vitamin E, which is essential for healthy skin, and potassium, helping to maintain and manage blood pressure. Next is salt is not your friend. Most people in the United States consume far more sodium than is recommended, and keeping an eye on your consumption, aiming for no more than 2,300 milligrams per day, is worthwhile, especially if you have high blood pressure or you're worried about heart disease. The evidence against ultra-processed food is mounting. Consuming too many ultra-processed foods like sugary sodas, processed meats, salty snacks, and frozen meals can increase the risk of health conditions like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, and certain gastrointestinal diseases. We also know that we don't eat only for the sake of nutrition. Should we just remove the emotion from food and think of it as fuel to keep our bodies going? That really doesn't work for most of us. We have an emotional and nurturing connection to food beyond energy for our brain and bodies. A healthy relationship with food revolves around flexibility and balance. We can give ourselves permission to eat all kinds of foods while still feeling like we're in control. The first step toward a healthier relationship with emotional eating is mindfulness. Instead of either restricting or reaching for the food without thinking, become aware of what purpose the food is serving and what need it's meeting for you. Are you using food to cope with boredom or stress? Or are we choosing to be part of a family custom or celebrate an occasion with a slice of birthday cake? Mindful eating helps you decide how far you want to be dedicated to only eating the most nutrient-dense foods, at the risk of missing out on moments that involve food for pleasure, socialization, and connection. We can participate with moderation and still strive to make good choices. So, how do you go about doing this? Well, part of it really starts with shopping, going to the grocery store. So here's some tips to help you. One thing to help you with your shopping is to do most of your shopping on the outer aisles of the grocery store. This is where the whole foods can be found. Only go down the other aisles for the specific items you need so you won't be tempted to buy canned or overly processed food. Don't shop when you're hungry. When we shop for food while hungry, we are more likely to make unhealthy choices and give in to cravings. Be sure to eat a healthy snack before heading to the store to help curb your hunger and avoid impulse purchases. Don't hesitate to stock up on frozen fruits and vegetables. Produce starts to lose its nutritional value as soon as it's harvested. Frozen fruits and vegetables are often more nutrient-packed than fresh fruits and vegetables because they're frozen soon after harvesting. Frozen fruits and vegetables are a great staple to have for weekday breakfast and for your dinner prep. Now, I know that we've all been told to read the nutrition labels, but let me give you some suggestions of what you're looking for. When shopping for packaged food, be sure to read the labels carefully. Nutrition fact labels are incredibly important to look at while grocery shopping. Determine whether something is cart-worthy with these tips. The shorter the ingredient list, the better. When reading the ingredients on a label, if there are more than a handful of ingredients, try to avoid that item. Fresh fruits and vegetables don't have labels at all, which means that they're whole food. Avoid ingredients that you don't recognize. If the ingredients listed sound more like something from a chemistry lab, consider not buying it. It's also a best practice to avoid foods with trans fat, added sugars, and a high sodium content. And the definition of a high sodium content is 20% or more of the daily value. Know the 5-to-1 rule. This is, for every 5 grams of carbohydrate listed, there should be at least 1 gram of fiber. Meaning, if the carbohydrate count is 25 grams, you'd want to see a fiber content of 5 grams or higher to identify it as a whole grain food. Look for the word whole in the ingredients list. If the first item in the ingredient list states whole, the product will likely be a whole grain. Whole grains are a great source of fiber, vitamins, and minerals. Look for items like brown rice, whole wheat bread, and oats. Avoid refined foods like white bread, pasta, and rice, which are low in nutrients and can cause blood sugar spikes. Whole Food Earth offers some tips to make not choosing ultra-processed foods easier. Number 1 is make a shopping list. Look through your pantry and fridge to see what you still have there. Write down all the ingredients and packaged food on a grocery list and focus on the things you really need. Take the list with you when you go to the supermarket. Now, that might seem like, well, of course, if I made a list, I'm going to take it with you, but I can't tell you how many times people in my household forget their list. This way, you'll focus on the necessary product, and you're not going to get tempted by aggressive advertisements for snacks, processed foods, and ready meals in the aisles. 2, replace refined food with whole foods. Forget about pre-made foods, ready meals, white bread, supermarket cakes, and chips that are ultra-processed and contain chemicals and additives that are harmful to your body. Instead, replace with whole foods like beans, healthy oils, nuts, seeds, and whole grains. 3 is cook more often and get creative. Cooking at home isn't really that complicated when you have your pantry stocked with the right products. Get some herbs and spices to make your meals full of flavor. You can easily find quick recipes that'll only take you 30 minutes to prepare. There are so many combinations of ingredients and flavor that you can enjoy something new every day. 4, fill up your pantry with healthy snacks. Healthy snacks include unprocessed, healthy whole foods like nuts, seed, dry foods, and lightly processed natural foods. Healthy snacks do not contain sugar, excess salt, and fats. Instead, they offer you nutrients such as what nature made them for. They contain minerals and vitamins and good calories that help you stay healthy and full of energy. 5, eat more fruits and vegetables. We just don't eat enough vegetables and fruit in our modern diets. Veggies and fruits are the best, purest, unprocessed food that you could eat. They are packed with vitamins and minerals to keep you and your immune system healthy. The current research indicates that the most effective combination of fruits and vegetables are 2 servings of fruit plus 3 servings of vegetables per day for a total of 5 servings daily. Now, there's a link in the resource section for how to determine how much to eat for fruit or vegetable serving. I also found an app called Plant Power that helps you track your daily fruit and vegetables. Its icon is a green apple, and you're going to search Fiber Tracker Plant Power. It's simple to use and free and helps you stay on track when eating a variety of fruits and vegetables is not in your daily routine. And I have it on my phone because I tend to forget to eat 5 fruits and vegetables a day. I know that sounds strange, but I really do. And so having that on my phone, I can keep track that I'm doing what I'm supposed to. 6, drink more water. Water is the best drink you can have. It makes you feel better and fuller. It has some cleansing properties and removes toxins from your body. Drinking more water can also help with digestion. And 7, change your eating routine. Try to plan regular hours for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and stick to it. When you eat a balanced, healthy, whole food meal, your body will feel satisfied for longer and you won't crave snacks before the next meal. In conclusion, there's clearly something about ultra-processed foods that make people eat more of them without necessarily wanting to or realizing they're doing it. The ad that says you can't eat just one is true. And the negative effects of ultra-processed foods are quite clear, even though the reasons for the effects are not yet known. So until we find out why these foods are so addictive, it's best to eat ultra-processed foods in as small amounts as possible. And that might mean that you buy the smallest bag of whatever it is as possible. Get the snack size, not the family size, because if you've got the family size there, chances are, once you start eating them, you're going to finish the bag. There are 9 disease-fighting foods that you should eat every week. The biggest impact comes when you eat plenty of health-boosting foods so the nutrients can interact with one another to fight disease. The reasons why these foods are important are available in the resource list, but the foods to include every week are salmon, lentils, spinach and other leafy greens, black or green tea, oats, blueberries, pumpkin seeds, eggs, and winter squash. Foods may not exactly be medicine, but eating the right food is one of the best ways to prevent disease or slow down the effects of the diseases that we already have. And so if you want to go on the slow road to death, changing what you eat is a good place to start. Charles, any thoughts, questions?
Mon Dieu. Okay. Mindfulness. Because, you and I have been friends for a long time, and over the years you've pointed out, I mean, just what you're saying about, watching what you eat, healthy, natural food as opposed to processed food. But this whole notion of mindfulness, I don't know. How do you get the average Joe to stop and think? Yeah. Well, actually, even just simple what you just said. Instead of the family-sized pack of potato chips, let me get this little small pack of chips. I mean, how do I don't know. It's in my mindset now, but how do you get people at large to stop and think about that, and make smarter choices? Not to and again, I'm never going to eliminate potato chips. Maybe I will one day, but I like potato chips. But I am careful not to get a big bag, and I will get those little small portion bags on occasion. But how do you get people to be mindful of that, to think about that, and not just go, in the grocery store, they see something, they want it, or as you said, don't go shopping while you're hungry. I mean, how do you get people just to think about that and not just eat and buy on impulse?
I think that knowledge is power, and that if people like us, raise these issues, maybe something will click for somebody. I know, like you see this, the school size, the lunchbox size of cookies or crackers or whatever. I like to buy those because I'll get one package of those and go to wherever it is I'm going to have my snack, and I'm too lazy to get up and go get another one. But if I have a huge package of cookies and I just take the whole package with me, then it's kind of all over,
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. Yes.
Because I know myself at this point I know myself. So I try to not put myself in the position where I'm going to do something that's going to upset my tummy. Not that I don't do it, or if when I do it, I say, why did I just do that? And then the question is, why did I just do that? And that's the other part of mindfulness, is to say, what need are you filling in that moment? But like we said in the first show in the series, is that we have this aversion to thinking about or talking about death. Well, then let's put it off for as long as possible and do some of the things that we know are healthier choices.
Oh, shoot. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. This aversion against death, but we eat ourselves to death.
Yeah.
Huh. Wow. Yes. Yeah. And again, a lot of times it is, from what I've seen, it's just, about convenience. People just don't want to take the time. But the other thing too, I mean, there are, and I can't believe in America, so many people go to bed hungry, especially children. It's not that,
Mm.
this is America. It's not that there isn't enough food for everyone, but it's just, the word just doesn't get out there. And people, especially, the poor, or the working poor, I know here in New York, and this is true across America, in poorer sections of, of the city, it is the, processed food that flies off the shelf. It's less
Per-
expensive. Exactly. It's less expensive,
It's
and
cheap. You get,
people
two
have,
two bags
yeah,
for one,
yeah,
and nobody's giving 2 pieces of fruit for the price of one.
exactly. And here, there was some article, I don't know, a while ago, what you just said of, nobody gives, 2 pieces of fruit for one. Um, Not to contradict you, but that does happen. But again, in the poorer neighborhoods, those 2 pieces of fruit for one, is fruit that's old. It doesn't, quote, look good. And appearance, is everything for a lot of people. So, the argument is made, oh, you can still get fruit in poor neighborhoods. Yeah, but it looks like crap. It's been sitting around for a while. Um, yeah, it's just not in the foreground. But
There's the concept of food as medicine has there's some nonprofits that are giving coupons for fruits and vegetables for people who have diabetes or heart disease,
right, yeah,
to help them afford to eat better. And it's still a small program. We still
right.
have better reimbursement to buy drugs to treat diabetes than we have a reimbursement to have a healthier diet to treat diabetes.
Yeah, and actually, there's a bigger and bigger push for just that, about just getting the word out to people, especially in less affluent neighborhoods. But it's still a small amount of people will actually do that. New York is very good about getting the word out, but people worry about where's the next, that when the next paycheck comes, that there's not going to be some emergency and suddenly you have to make a repair in your home, which can just unbalance people. It's yeah. Oh, the other thing, when you mentioned about whole foods, what am I trying to ask here? If with foods that are less chemical induced and all that sort of stuff, is there a limit? What am I asking here? So if some I don't know, grocery store says, yes, this is our whole food section, but for example, it's a loaf of bread that's not the same as traditional white bread, it's labeled as whole food, but let's say the chemical content is 50%. Is there some federal regulation that says, you know what, whole food means you cannot have more than, 20% of chemicals? Or are food manufacturers able to just say, oh, yes, this is whole food, regardless of the amount of chemicals in there? Do you see what I'm
I
asking?
don't know. Yeah, I do. I don't know. I don't know what the law says about that. But
Mhm.
we can all read the ingredients, and Like I said, you're looking for the fewer number of ingredients and the names of things you can recognize. If it has a long list of things that you say, I don't even know what this is, then it's not a whole food.
Makes sense. Okay, so in our third half, astronomers have witnessed a dying star swallowing an entire planet. We're not talking about some Hollywood actor who has seen better days. Margaret Osborne for Smithsonian Magazine states, for decades, scientists have only been able to witness the before and after of such planetary engulfment. MIT astrophysicist Kishalay D was among the first to see a planet gobbled up by a star. Astronomers believe the planet was a gas giant about the size of Jupiter, engulfed by a sun-like star about 12,000 light-years from Earth that had been puffing up for eons. This is called planetary engulfment. Meanwhile, Dr. D had been looking for something completely different. Merging stars called red novas, which occurs as a star snatches matter from another. Imagine snatching the last nacho off a plate and dipping it in the last bit of salsa. It was in those observations that the doctor stumbled across an unusual burst of light. The bright light could have been an indication of two stars merging. Think Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston. But then you realize it's actually a star and a gaseous planet. Think Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. When stars begin to die, you may define star any way you wish. They expand and become nearly 1 million times larger in size. Scientists have theorized that during this phase, the star probably engulfs nearby planets, emitting bursts of light in the process. But until now, evidence of this has been circumstantial, as University of California, Los Angeles astrophysicist Nadir Naouz tells Science News. As mentioned earlier, for decades, scientists have only been able to witness the before and after of such planetary engulfment. Researchers say planetary engulfment is very likely relatively common throughout the universe, but reservations are still a good idea. For over a century, physics models have predicted that this should be the fate of planets orbiting close to certain smaller stars. In theory, unless a star is about 8 times more massive than our Sun, it won't die in a supernova. Instead, as it burns up its fuel, a star will get dimmer and swell outward, engulfing anything in its path. But astronomers had never actually seen this happen until now. Signs of swallowing engulfment events are littered across the Milky Way, says Morgan McLeod of Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. There's a star, and as it's running out of fuel, it's starting to expand, and it reaches the orbit of a planet. That planet starts to skim around the atmosphere of the star, and then eventually it falls in completely. The process of the dying star swallowing the planet caused the star to become 100 times brighter over several days. That planet existed there for billions of years, and then in something like 10 days is the final ramping up of that sort of being swallowed, Dr. McLeod said, adding that it will be about 5 billion years before our sun expands to a point where it will make a happy meal out of the Earth. He notes that 1 billion years from now, our sun will have expanded to a size that makes Earth uninhabitable. Eventually, our aging sun will also expand, swallowing the Earth, Mercury, and Venus. We are seeing the future of the Earth, Dr. D adds. If some other civilization was observing us from 10,000 light years away while the sun was engulfing the Earth, they would see the sun suddenly brighten as the Earth is being digested by our sun. It ejects some material, then from dust around it, before settling back to what it was. And on that happy note, that's it for this week's episode. Stay tuned for the continuing saga of Everyone Dies, and thank you for listening. This is Charlie Navarrete, And from writer Kurt Vonnegut, when the last living thing has died on account of us, how poetical if Earth could say, "It is done." People did not like it here.
And I'm Marianne Matzo, and we'll see you next week. Remember, try to make good choices, and every day is a gift.
This podcast does not provide medical advice. All discussion on this podcast, such as treatments, dosages, outcomes, charts, patient profiles, advice, messages, and any other discussion are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Always seek the advice of your primary care practitioner or other qualified health providers with any questions that you may have regarding your health. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard from this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Everyone Dies does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, practitioners, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned in this podcast. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast by persons appearing on this podcast at the invitation of Everyone Dies or by other members is solely at your own risk.